Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors, episode 317. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard Chris Saturn.
Hello.
I said most of those words correctly.
You did. I was very proud of you. I was waiting for it, and you were just fine.
Started to slip. We do have housekeeping. And we talked about this on After Hours for people that have After Hours, and they've already heard about it. I called it a restructuring in After Hours. It's not. We're not restructuring literally anything.
Right.
We're kind of in a realignment of the show's focus right now. I know that everybody loves our longer episodes.
Focus, more just emphasis.
Yeah. I know everyone loves our longer episodes. We've been veering toward hour and a half as kind of our standard length for a while now. But I also feel like we've been including a lot of like news and information and stuff that is not conducive to the discourse we want to have on the show.
And also, we despite us including more, we also feel like we're constantly rushing to include these extraneous things we don't need.
So basically, all of this is a weird roundabout way to say that we are taking more selective notes, hopefully having more selective discussions. We're cutting out because people on our news submissions channel in our Discord, which is where we get all of our news from. People submit all kinds of things, and that's wonderful because you submit it to have a discussion about it, which we do just about every news article. We can all see
it and we can talk about it.
But it occurred to me when we were like covering some news about like, the PlayStation 5 on our retro game show, and it was news that people wouldn't hear for 3 weeks anyway because we record ahead of schedule. Like, we're just kind of trimming some of the fat from the show, I think, is the best way to think about it. So if the show seems a little more briskly paced than usual, then that is why. Traditionally,
it may take us 3-4 episodes before we figure out exactly how to pace this the way that we want with the changes that we're making,
or until we just slide back into our old habits, which is
that also could happen.
But all this to say, I mean, we did our Command and Conquer episode, and we had 8 full pages of notes that we went through
twice,
and a lot of twice because we had to re-record it, and a lot of that was stuff that like. We didn't really have anything to say about. We were just like, and then this came out, which we included for historical accuracy, but this show is not a historical account.
What?
We are not historians. You know, we get our information from the same places you do. Hardcore Gaming 101, Wikipedia, Shmuplations, like it's...
Oh, I just make it all up.
Oh, no. Shit! If you want real, like, bullet point history on gaming, it's out there. That's not what we aim to do here. We aim to have an interesting discussion about a topic. So I guess I'll get down off my soapbox. Also, I had a cold last week.
It's true.
Or week before last. I don't know. I'm still kind of snotty.
I think it was right after we recorded.
Yeah, so I'm still kind of snotty and phlegmy from getting over that. So if I'm, making gross noises, then I apologize.
Just enjoy them. Just like lay back and enjoy them.
Anyway, my week, I've gotten all excited about PC gaming again. Because the Steam Deck is coming in like one short year.
Yeah, in some time.
So Q2 2022 probably.
Yeah.
And so so like a lot of like my gaming habits have turned toward the Switch, not because I think the Switch is that amazing of a device. I like the Switch. It's a good handheld. There are lots of things I would change about it, like, a lot of things. But everything gets ported there. So if I'm going to play a game, I'm going to buy and play it on Switch because Switch gives me the most flexibility for my lifestyle, which means I can play it handheld, I can play it upstairs, I can play it downstairs, I can play it on my TV, I can take it to the lake with me, I can do whatever I'm going to do with it.
Yeah.
And so the promise of the Steam Deck is enough to get me newly invested in PC gaming. The promise of something going, hey, this game you're buying today on Steam for $2, whenever you get your Steam Deck, you can take it on the go with you.
Right.
And so I'm kind of like in the early phases of transitioning from Switch being my main platform where I buy most things to PC being that.
Right.
When traditionally I kind of pared my PC gaming down to PC gaming centric titles, strategy games, action RPGs, stuff that like is built first for the PC, keyboard and mouse. And so anything that was like, oh, it's a long RPG or something, like, oh, I'm definitely getting that on Switch. I'm not going to sit in front of my Xbox for 70 hours. I'm not going to sit in front of my PC for 70 hours, but I'll carry my Switch around with me for 70 hours or whatever it is. All that to say, I've hooked my Steam links back up.
Right.
And
I didn't realize you disconnected them.
Well, it wasn't that I was like, I'm done with these. It was like I unplugged them to plug something else in one time, then they just didn't get plugged back in. I have a PC connected to my living room TV that does a lot of my Steam and home streaming stuff.
That's fair.
But I went back through my Steam, because I had also cleared out my Steam library, because for people that don't use Steam, you can add non-Steam games to your Steam library and then play them on your Steam link. Yeah. But it's kind of weird because it's not intelligent. So if I install a game on the Epic Game Store, God forbid, and then I add it to Steam, then it'll work. But then if later on I uninstall it from the Epic Game Store and then I forget to remove the link from Steam, Steam doesn't know and it's still listed. So I had a bunch of dead links where it was like, oh, I guess I uninstalled that or whatever. And so I cleared it out. I refilled it with all of my currently installed games.
Right.
And hooked up my Steam links. I got everything set up for big picture mode. I've been doing the Steam gaming, and I was like, man, I forgot how fantastic PC gaming is. It's so great. I love PC gaming. Let's find a nice long RPG to settle into. And so I booted up Tales of Vesperia, which is a game I bought a while back after starting Tales of Symphonia, really enjoying it, and being like, oh, this is like a 100-hour game. I'm not going to play this on my GameCube with no cheats. Just not going to do that. And so at the time, I had gone, okay, well, what's another good Tales game? Like, what's the best Tales game? And a lot of people were like, either Vesperia or what's the other one? Zarestria?
I don't know. I always heard Symphonia.
I don't know. But everyone was like, Tales of Vesperia is great. You should play that one. Yeah. And I started playing it and immediately had massive PC gaming related issues because, of course, it's a Japanese game.
Yeah.
And Japanese games have bad PC ports.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Almost across the board.
Not all of them, but a lot of them, yeah.
Name some that don't.
Resident Evil 2 is
okay.
Good.
There you
PC
go.
port. And of course, several of the Ease games were on PC first before they were on console.
That's true.
So they work really well. Yeah.
Anyway, so this is the issue I had. Are you ready for this? Boot the game up. You have to use the keyboard until you get in-game past the first cinematic, and then you pause the game and enable your gamepad. Kind of annoying, but
that's dumb.
Whatever. Yeah, it is dumb, but once it's enabled, it's enabled. And then everything works fine, except for your interact button that you use to talk to NPCs and pick items up off the ground.
You don't use that much in a JRPG.
But that button works everywhere else, like if you're in dialogue or you're in a menu or something. So the button is mapped correctly and it works. It just will not interact with anything in the world. And I was like, that's the weirdest fucking issue I've ever fucking had in a game. Normally it would be like, oh, this button won't map or it doesn't recognize or it's whatever. And so then the game doesn't let you save until you're like 20 minutes into it.
Right.
So I'm trying to fix this issue before I get to the save point. Finally, I make it to the save point. I walk up to it and it's like, press the A button to save. But you can't press it. And then finally I realize I can pause it and save there. So I save and I'm going back and forth. Finally, I find this person online. Their username is Special K, and it's the person that does like all of the big JRPG mods. This person they've done. I'm pretty sure they did the Nier mod that fixed Nier, which was also broken. Yeah. And I finally got it installed, and it fixed just literally everything in one fell swoop, seamlessly, magically. And then of course the thing I was tinkering with was fixed. So I went, excellent. That works for when I want to play it. And I saved the game and I closed it. I haven't opened it since.
Never touched it again, yeah.
And because I'm playing it, I'm like, I really should get back to the games I was already playing.
Right.
Which is Grim Dawn. I was playing Grim Dawn and I went back to Grim Dawn and realized why I put Grim Dawn down is because I forgot where I was going and I can't figure out who to talk to figure out where I need to go. So then I turned that off and then just played nothing and watched YouTube videos and I was like, fuck. This is the problem. This right here exactly is the problem.
Well, that seems like a normal gaming day. That's regular.
But other than that, getting my Steam Links back up and running, the Series X controller still does not work on the Steam Link unless it's wired Yep, does not work.
Weird, because on my Android TV, I have my Series X controller connected, and the Steam Link app for Android recognizes it as a Series X controller and uses all the functions of it.
I believe it is a Bluetooth limitation. Because I also have that 8-bit DOE wireless adapter, and I was like, I'll sync it with that, and I look it up, and they haven't added support, and I was like, why the fuck haven't they added support? 8-bit DOE's so good about adding support.
That's so weird that the native Bluetooth on the Shield would be able to use it, and that wouldn't.
Yeah, apparently it's so the 8-bit DOE I know is Bluetooth 2.0, which is too old to interface with the Series X. Or the new X, whatever, the core controller, whatever they fucking call it now.
Whatever the current Xbox controller is.
And I'm guessing the Steam Link is also probably Bluetooth 2.0. I would guess.
Probably it.
And so I don't think it can interact. So I have to get one of those wireless adapters to use my Series controller.
Or
so I just
could just use an older Xbox controller.
Shut up, Saturn. Get out of here. What it is I've got those nice silicone skins for my Series X controllers, and they're just so nice. I did end up going back to my 8-bit DOE SN30 Pro Plus.
Nice.
And I've been using that to great effect. It's been great. Works good. Good controller. Also, my Series X. So to continue the story, that's already too long. I know. I'm sorry. PC gaming, everybody. It's the future. I was like, well, I won't use my Steam Link. I'll just pair it directly with Windows on my laptop that's hooked up to my TV and use Steam in-home streaming. That will just randomly be like, I don't see your Xbox controller, and then it won't pair with it again until I reboot.
That's bizarre.
So I think one of those Microsoft wireless adapters is in my near future.
Did you try making sure there's not a firmware update for that controller?
It is updated.
Okay.
Because both of them, when I got them, the one updated with the Xbox, but then the first one, when I paired it with Windows was like, hey, do you want to update this? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're up to date.
Fair enough.
I don't fucking know.
Weird. My Series X controller randomly disconnects wirelessly from the Xbox.
Mine did that at first when I first got my Series X, and then it kind of stopped doing it.
It mostly has stopped doing it, but every now and then, like it happened the other night for the first time in weeks, and I was like, oh, we're doing this again. But it only did it that one time. So
I noticed it in specific games. And this is just my guess at the situation. What it felt like was certain games were desyncing it, and those games updated.
Maybe,
if I remember correctly. Now it could also just be that they just haven't updated at the same time as the firmware was fixed or whatever. But Anywho, what have you been doing, Saturn?
So I finally finished Yakuza 7, which means I've finished all 8 main series Yakuza games now.
So now you're gonna go play the Fist of the North Star one on PS4.
No, I'm taking a break. So
what do you mean?
So let me give my review, my relatively spoiler-free review of Yakuza 7.
Yes.
So story-wise, it spent 11 and a half, almost 12 chapters just kind of being fine. Like it was a fun...
Out of 15?
Yes, out of 15. It was still fun, and it was an interesting story and some really neat characters, but it never really felt like it was going anywhere. It just kind of felt like it was... like here's a random event that is kind of tangentially related to these previous events. And then finally, near the end of chapter 12, it's like, oh, this is the main story. Here you go. And then it ramped up quickly from there. And the ending is great. I loved it. It's one of the best endings the series has had. Absolutely worth playing through if you enjoy them. So story-wise, and as far as I don't know that I would say that it is my favorite Yakuza game or that it is the best ending, but it is a really good Yakuza game and a really good ending for a Yakuza game. So it is worth that. However, looking at it as a JRPG, because I am a fan of JRPGs,
I've heard of these.
I have far more criticisms of the game there. Because,
like Zelda, right? It's Japanese. You assume the role of Link.
Yeah.
You got a sword.
Yeah.
It's pretty much
that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. Yeah, I know those.
So
someone at home is like, stop!
Don't let him say it. I keep seeing all these people online that are like, it's the best JRPG in years. I'm like, it's not. So there's a few problems that I have with it. First of all, the most glaring problem is the consistency of the difficulty is everywhere. Like you will find, like, I get why, because they wanted to make the world open, but they also wanted it to feel like certain areas were more dangerous than other areas. But
it's frustrating when a level 10 enemy isn't the same as another level 10 enemy.
Right. And eventually you realize it's because each different enemy type has its own strength scale on top of the level scale that it presents to you. But that doesn't help especially early on when you're roaming around. And my biggest problem is the way they handle difficulty so often is just by making enemies damage sponges, where they just have way too much health. And they take forever to beat down. Once you've gotten further into the job system, you can get some abilities that make that much easier to mitigate, but that's another problem I have with the game. There's very few jobs. You get access to all of them very early, comparatively. And so you can... there doesn't feel to be any progression when it comes to the job system, because you're just given all of it and you're like, well, figure it out.
Yeah, they're like, make the best of it, and you're like, you mean look up an online optimization guide?
Right, basically.
Whereas to compare to like job system Final Fantasy games,
right?
Like, you can optimize those, but I never felt the need. I felt like the optimal route was always easy to tell what a good idea was.
Yeah, and often they warm you into it by like, here's a few jobs here, and then we'll give you some more jobs later, and then eventually we'll give you the good jobs.
With Yakuza, in my time with it, like, I enjoyed the battle system, but I never knew what to do with the job system. It was always like, it felt indecipherable. I was like, I don't quite get it.
The short answer is everything. They want you to level up all the jobs to at least level 20 or so.
No.
And then to get to the point where you got to, the big difficulty spike.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a fairly high level, higher than anything up to that point has even hinted at requiring, and also have leveled up all those jobs, there are cheese ways to get through that particular fight.
Right.
And then the next chapter is a harder fight.
Oh my God.
Which, fortunately, it has an even dumber cheese way to get through it, which I accidentally found out just by thinking about like series lore and jokes from previous games. And managed to make myself invincible for that fight. So that was nice. But and then you continue to get closer and closer to the end, and there are a lot more damage sponge enemies as you get closer to the end. But by then you should have unlocked enough higher level job abilities to make that something you can handle. And so by the time I got to the final boss, I wasn't really having any problems anymore. I was about level 80 with everybody, and everybody was between level 20 and 30 on every job.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last boss went down pretty easy. And then after you finish the game, it's like, hey, there's a bonus dungeon. You can do that now if you want. And I put the game down for a day, and then I came back the next day and I was like, oh, I'll try this bonus dungeon real quick. And I rushed through that. It was not a big deal. I was surprised by how not big of a deal it was, considering some of the post-game bonus challenge content in the previous games has been just frustratingly, terribly difficult.
Yeah.
And this was, manageable. I got through it. I had to heal more than normal, but I got through. And I was like, well, I did not expect that to be so attainable. And then I finished that, and it's like, oh no, there's a post game dungeon now. You should try that. And I was like, well, I got through that one pretty easy. Let's go check it out. And I go walk up to it, and before it lets you walk in, it's like, notice this dungeon doesn't let you use the retry function if you die, and you will have to start from outside. Also, we recommend that you're level 99 on all characters and at least job level 90.
Oh my God.
And I was like, no, there's no way. And I go in and immediately get killed by the first enemy in one hit.
Oh shit.
So I found the area with the metal slime like enemies, and I did some grinding for a couple hours and got everybody to 99 much faster than I thought I would.
Saturn, come on!
It was less than 3 hours for me to get everybody to level 99.
A mere less than 3 hours of your life. Yeah. Okay.
And then I had my job levels at about 90 at that point. So I was like, let's try it again. And I managed to get through that first battle, and I was like, that's the hard part. I can do this. And then I got into a groove, and first of all, every hit from every enemy was still doing at least half my health.
Yeah.
And they had ridiculously high agility, so they were getting more turns than me too. So I was just constantly healing with at least one character, sometimes two. And it was a real struggle, and I got about halfway through, and then this one asshole enemy decides to do a move that hits 3 times in one action, and each of those 3 hits did half of my HP damage, and he targeted Kasuga, and of course if Kasuga dies, it's game over. Which
is stupid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I lost all progress up to that point, and now I'm just angry, and I don't want to touch it anymore.
So overall...
Yeah.
Would you say that this is something where only really dedicated JRPG fans need apply?
Well, the bonus dungeon, yes, certainly.
Okay.
That final bonus dungeon, only if you are a masochist should you bother with that.
Or I guess maybe a better question is definitely required grinding in Yakuza 7.
For the game itself, yeah, I would say so. It seems to expect you to have... Because it constantly litters these like, hey, you can revisit this dungeon now messages at you.
Yeah.
And what it means...
Well, unfortunately, the dungeons in the game are the weakest part of the game.
They're very long.
They're not...
And also the last dungeon and the bonus dungeon and the bonus dungeon, none of them have save spots.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do the entire thing in one go, and all 3 of them kill the retry function. So you can't just retry if you fail. You have to get through the whole thing without dying, and that's poor design. I would say the dungeons in general are poor design, and every time that you get the option to revisit one, the game expects you to do so, because not doing so leaves you too low of a level for what is the next thing you should do.
I need to just get on the PC version, max level all my guys, save it, and then sync it with my Xbox and just fire through the rest. Because I do want to see the rest of the story.
Yeah, as far as the story goes,
the
that would make it very easy. Because there is a cheat engine table that I found that accelerates the amount of experience you get from battle and nothing else. And experience and job experience. And if you just turn those on and use it to grind for a few minutes, just to get that out of the way, you get through the story and even the first bonus dungeon very easily.
Yeah. Let's knock the news out, which again is much more succinct than what we have grown it into.
Right.
There are a couple of things in here that normally I wouldn't talk about, but they're either silly or they're a follow-up on something we previously reported on, so I do want to give that.
Or we just want to make fun of it.
Right. There is a rumor that Nintendo may be ending submissions for new 3DS and Wii U eShop games on April of 2022.
Yeah, that's...
Which I can't say I'm shocked.
No, that's not surprising. It is unfortunate, but
it's sad that 3DS is lumped in there when it was until very recently still... I mean, really, it still feels like it's a hot-selling item. Like, as soon as they come into stock, they sell out again.
Right.
But,
and,
what do I know?
And the last time Nintendo even mentioned the 3DS, they were like, oh, it is still a separate pillar next to the Switch. And then suddenly they weren't making games for it anymore.
EVGA is replacing all 3090 RTX cards killed by Amazon's MMO, which I've seen the name of like a dozen times, but it's the most generic. I never remember. It's called like New Lands or New Worlds or like that. Big World or something.
Big World.
Welcome to Amazon's Big World. It is a big world in which your graphics card died.
New World is the name of the game.
Oh, New World. Yeah.
Which sounds like the fake MMO from .hack.
That's so specific.
Actually, no, the name of the one in that was The World, if I remember right.
Wow. They were phoning that one in, huh? And then we have multiple Activision Blizzard updates. First, many current and former employees have spoken publicly, written letters, and even organized walkouts at Blizzard.
Good.
J. Allen Brack, the person who refused to apologize for the suppression of Hong Kong protesters during that Hearthstone thing that happened a while back, although he said the word sorry many times, but he never actually said he or Blizzard were sorry, has left the company.
Though he did sound more apologetic about this current event than anyone else at Activision Blizzard has.
Yeah, he did seem very sad that they got caught. He seemed very upset about that. Since this is an ongoing court case, it's going to take years, for stuff to come out. And I just wanted to say that I felt obligated to report on it again because we talked about it so much recently when it broke. Unless there's really any major news coming out, I don't plan to report on Activision Blizzard again on the show proper.
Right.
We've
we'll chat about it in the Discord
yeah.
here and there, but
We've all said our pieces.
Right. Unless we find out that Crash Bandicoot is also implicated in all of this, if he was one of the perpetrators, we'll definitely report on that.
I've seen those old commercials of Crash Bandicoot
with the megaphone. Yeah,
makes me wonder.
Mm-hmm.
So all this to say that we are still, at least all of everyone on staff here is still very shaken up and upset about the whole thing, and frustrated, and still following it.
Right.
But as it is not really necessarily retro relevant,
right?
We probably won't talk about it again, unless something like Megaton comes out. You know, Krispy Kreme is selling Xbox donuts
now in the UK.
In the UK,
right now,
but they look really tasty.
They do look adorable. And
do you think they're full of like Xbox flavored goo?
I assume it's Mountain Dew flavor.
Gross! Oh, gross!
No, apparently it's UK exclusive. They're getting these donuts that look like the Xbox logo, and they're adorable.
Yeah.
Unless you look at any of the actual ones and not the promotional shots, they look less adorable. And then in the US, we're getting a Halo themed donut from Krispy Kreme when the new game comes out. So
I'm excited
you can
for that.
look
What's it going to look like?
It's got a Master Chief on it.
No, I was hoping to be something better than that.
You'd think that it's a donut. They could just make it shaped like the Halo, couldn't they?
The game is called Halo.
Right?
A donut is a ring.
Yeah.
Although I don't really know how they'd make it look like. Yeah.
They just
I don't know.
I don't know.
They can just put some grass on the top of it and put little tiny grunts on it and have them be shooting laser beams. Hironobu Sakaguchi's Fantasian Part 2 is nearly done and will reportedly be much longer than the first part, although this is the first I've ever heard of it ever.
Really?
Yeah, what is this thing?
It's his new storybook-looking JRPG that is exclusive to
it was
Apple
iOS
Arcade.
only. Yeah, that's why I've totally forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad there's going to be another one. I'm sad that I'm not allowed to play it, but
it's
I
keep looking at the free trial of Apple Arcade on my iPad to be like, should I try this? No, it's not worth my time. I got enough stuff to play right now that I know I wouldn't even get to it, so why bother?
SRG 320 has continued their work on the Mr. Saturn core, and it's now running a game. It's still in super duper beta, but it's running a game. The game they chose is Earthworm Jim 2.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I don't know why.
I just like the way that you phrased it from the notes. It makes it sound like a Mr. Saturn, like from Earthbound.
Yes, the Saturn core for the Mr. FPGA hardware.
Yes, there you go. There's not a core for Mr. Saturns.
Which a lot of people, including myself, probably said seems impossible to run on that hardware, but they're making progress.
Yeah, good on them.
3DFX is teasing a return to the graphics card market for anyone under the age of 30. 3DFX used to make graphics cards, and for anyone else under the age of 30, more than 2 companies used to make graphics cards.
Yeah, back in the late 90s, 3DFX was one of the premier graphics card companies for a while there. If you wanted 3D accelerated graphics, your options were 3DFX or Voodoo if you have money, and ATI if you didn't.
Yeah. Yep. And finally, Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster is getting review bombed because it's not on console.
That's a good reason, right?
People are fucking angry. That it is not on console. Now, I get it.
Right.
I mean, they couldn't even come up. Have you seen... I don't know what graphic designer they have working for the marketing materials for this game right now, or what person they have doing fonts.
Right. Oh, God.
But it's you go on Steam and you look and it's like Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Bundle, and it's just like someone just clip arted the word Pixel Remasters into the fucking bottom of the game image.
Yeah.
It looks like shit. It looks like whenever you go to search for a game on the Android store and, you're like, oh, I want Candy Crush. And it's like, did you want Candy Smash, Candy Break, Candy Crushers? It's got all these like fake knockoff. It looks like a fake knockoff version.
You know what the saddest
Final
part
Fantasy.
Is? If you look up these same Pixel Remasters on the Android store on iOS, the icons for them there look much better. It's very nice. It looks very classy.
It's like they just don't care about Android.
Right. Well, no, the Android version looks fine.
Anyway, that brings us to our topic at hand this week. We're talking Pocket Fighter.
Yes.
Which you may have
Also
heard
known
of.
as Super Gym Fighter Mini Mix.
Also known as Super Gym Fighter Mini Mix for some bizarre reason. What is the mini mix in it? Mini mix makes it sound like it's a cereal.
No, it's supposed to sound like a mixtape.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch Mini Mix. Like, it feels like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it's that fighting game spinoff of the puzzle game spinoff of Street Fighter 2 and maybe also Darkstalkers. It's weird. It was obviously developed and published by Capcom. For anyone that's seen it, it's all Capcom characters.
Yeah. It's super Capcom-y.
Came out sometime in 97 in arcades.
Yeah.
The PlayStation port came out in 1998. Saturn came out in 1998. Well, the port of it anyway.
Right, yeah.
Although only in Japan and it required the RAM cart. There was a Wonder Swan version in 2000.
It's really good, too.
It looks good.
Yeah,
I was trying to
messed
find the
around with it.
manual to figure out how to do some of the maneuvers in the game, and I kept finding materials for the Saturn or the Wonder Swan version, and I was like, no. That was obviously Japan only.
Right.
It was ported and published by Bandai. And then it came to PS2 in 2006 in the Street Fighter Alpha Anthology.
Right.
I could not tell you the first time I played this game. I think it was last year, maybe the year before. But it was a thing that like I only knew about because of you. And whenever I would bring up Gym Fighter,
You mean
you'd
Puzzle
be like,
Fighter.
"Oh, have you Puzzle Fight? God, yeah, Puzzle Fighter."
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Have you played the fighting game?" And I was like, "This is not the fighting game. I mean, it's you kind of fight with gyms."
No,
You're like,
it's a
"No,
puzzle
they made a fighting game." And I was like, "Street Fighter." And you're like, "No, that's what this is based off of. That's further away." It's weird. It's a weird spin-off of a spin-off.
Right.
When was your first?
So we had there was advertisements for it in the back of the manual. I want to say for Alpha 2 on PlayStation. If not that, it was a game around that time. Maybe it was Darkstalkers 3. But one of those games, because Capcom at the time was doing this Fighter's Edge thing, where all their fighting games on PlayStation had this very samey cover, and you could get like Capcom membership points or some bullshit.
Well, to be fair, in the late 90s, Capcom was cranking out like a lot of fucking fighting games.
A ton of them.
I mean, and we're going to talk about it next episode, but kind of too many. It was a really good time to be a Capcom fighting game fan.
It really, really was. I loved it. Anyway, so it was in there, and we were like, that looks weird. Because we thought it was going to be the Virtua Fighter Kids of Street Fighter. And then it came out, and I decided...
I wish they had just named it that, just given up all pretense.
But so I rented it, and we just really got into it because it is a lot deeper than Virtua Fighter Kids is. Like Virtua Fighter Kids tries to be Virtua Fighter in a super accessible form that anybody can handle.
Yeah, this is something totally different.
And this is a super accessible fighting game that also has these needlessly overcomplicated internal systems in it.
Yeah, I would
so
like you to explain some of those
we
when we
will.
get to that section.
But yeah, we had a lot of fun with it, and then I ended up finding a copy for cheap used on PlayStation. So I had
never I had played it before I played it on stream, but on stream was the first time I was like, all right, let me figure out how this game works, because I go into it and I'm like, oh, it's got Street Fighter characters. I'll play it like Street Fighter.
You kind of can.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, I would agree with that phrase. You kinda can.
Yeah.
But it becomes really evident really quickly that you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Like you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And that took me by surprise,
Right.
because it's a late 90s Capcom fighter that I assumed would be playable like every other late 90s Capcom fighter.
It's playable like a lot of them, in a way.
What do we know about the development of Pocket Fighter?
Not a lot. I tried to find things, and Capcom did not talk a lot about it. So it was sometime after the release of Puzzle Fighter 2, there was a team within Capcom that wanted to reuse the assets to develop some kind of fighting game. Their original intention was to make it kid-friendly, lighthearted, stuff like that. And their original working title was Street Fighter Kids. A lot like Virtua
Which
Fighter.
I feel like That would have been a better name than
The Super Gym Fighter Mini Mix?
Super Gym Fighter Mini Mix. Yeah, I couldn't even remember it. I was trying to look it up. Also, I wonder if anyone was ever confused by Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo being named Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo when there was no Super Puzzle Fighter 1 or regular 2.
Yeah, that's true. In Japan, it's Super Puzzle Fighter 2X.
That makes less sense.
Well, in Japan, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is Super Street Fighter 2X.
Right, but I don't know. It just seems weird. Like it's like I get that it's an in joke,
right?
But it just the idea of releasing an entire video game project whose naming scheme is an in joke in an insular community.
At that point in time, Street Fighter was such a massive property in the video game world that it was assumed that you would get that joke if you owned a video game system.
I guess that's true. I mean, and I guess to be fair, I don't know anyone that was sitting around going, "Where's Street Fighter 1 at? How come I never played that?" Right. Like, I don't know anyone that ever said that.
Yeah, despite the fact that you could play it if you had a Turbo CD and hated yourself. But nobody wanted to do that. Anyway, so yeah, they were originally going to make it Street Fighter Kids, and then
way better name.
And then at some point, they changed the name, and it is presumed because they decided to include a bunch of non-Street Fighter characters, so it wouldn't make sense to call it Street Fighter Kids.
True.
And of course, in Japan,
they just called it Capcom Kids.
Nope, that would be too simple.
Would.
In Japan, they just called it Pocket Fighter. Presumably,
Capcom Kids Fighter. There you go. That's it. That's everything you need to know.
Right. Presumably, it's called that because the characters are pocket-sized.
Muppet Babies Fighter Mini Mix.
Exactly. But for some reason, outside of Japan, the arcade version was called Super Gym Fighter Mini Mix, which is, I think, the best name of any game ever, but it is a really stupid name.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
Let's talk presentation.
Yeah.
This is super, like not SD, but like
it's SD.
You wrote chibi, but it's is it SD?
I would say it's SD versions of these characters.
I always imagine like SD being, super deformed characters being like gargantuan head, tiny little itty bitty body.
Well, their head is the same size as their body in this, roughly. So it's
I would classify that as chibi. I don't know the difference, but chibi seems more correct.
All right.
It's really super duper bright. It's a good looking game.
Yeah.
The sound is there.
I like the soundtrack.
I feel like it probably
there is some stuff influenced by the other games that it is referencing.
Right.
But there is some original tracks as well, and they're like way too upbeat sometimes. But they're fun.
It's one of those games where the sound effects drown out any background sound for me. There's a lot of screaming and fighting and gyms being picked up and things happening and
that was a thing with Capcom in that era. Like you had the Marvel Versus series that was the same way, where there was just so much sound effects and vocals going on that it was hard to even hear the music sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously in the game you have Street Fighter characters and then Darkstalkers characters, which hopefully we don't need to describe too terribly much.
Yeah.
But we did
covered
the
both of those
Darkstalkers episode. Yeah, if you want to go listen to that. But then also, and someone pointed this out on stream, Red Earth, which I know nothing about.
Right. It is
there.
Yeah, it was a 2D fighting game that was arcade only. It's basically a high fantasy fighting game. You got your wizards and your dragons and all that kind of shit.
See, now I'm interested. The character from there is Tessa.
Right. And some of the background characters also are represented. Some of the other Red Earth characters show up as cameos or also in story sequences and stuff. And to note, Red Earth has never been released on home consoles as of now. It is still arcade exclusive as of 2021. Obviously, you can emulate it, but they've never released it in a commercial emulation package.
It's too bad that Capcom has never released any type of arcade game collections that they could have included it in.
Seriously. And also, it is the first game that used the CPS-3 system, Red Earth was, which was the system that would go on to be used by Street Fighter 3. The CPS2 system was used by a ton of games. And
this one was CPS2.
Yes, this is also a CPS2 one.
You do have, they call them secret characters, but they're not that secret. No. You just like scroll to the left or the right of the character selection and you get Dan or Akuma.
Right.
Also, there are a ton of visual gags
Yes.
that pay homage to other Capcom series.
Right.
Many times my opponents, whenever I killed them, they would explode like Mega Man.
Yes.
Or someone pointed this out on stream because I didn't realize it, they would die like Arthur.
Yes.
They would turn into a little pile of bones.
Yes.
So it's very celebratory.
And there's also a
regard.
Sansan style death where they like jump off the screen and fall into a splash of water that wasn't there.
Yeah, and it's so it seems to really it does feel like a celebration of Capcom's properties in the weirdest possible way.
Yeah. This went the opposite
there.
direction that Smash Brothers would go the next year.
Yeah. Let's talk characters. You've got the Street Fighter characters,
Yes.
Ryukin, Zangief, Chun-Li, Ibuki's there, Sakura, Dan, and Akuma.
Yep.
Darkstalkers, you get Morgan, Felicia, I don't know how to pronounce this one.
Shenko, or
Shenko.
Lele.
Thank you.
I don't know why Japan got the easier to pronounce name for her and we didn't.
I don't know either.
That doesn't seem fair.
And then Tessa. And I do kind of wish, because this really, I feel like there should be more Capcom properties in this. It feels weird that it's mostly Street Fighter and then these other 4 characters.
Well, most of the characters just came directly from Puzzle Fighter.
Right. Which makes sense.
Which was already just Street Fighter and Darkstalkers characters.
Yeah. It feels like it's this era where like Capcom's like, I guess Darkstalkers isn't going to happen. What do we do with it? And you're like, well, we can make it part of Street Fighter. And they're like, yeah, let's always keep it just kind of separate.
Right.
But notably, no Street Fighter boss characters.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Which is very odd. No M. Bison, no Vega.
Also, one thing that I saw several websites point out about the game when I was looking it up is that this is the only Capcom fighting game to date that features more female combatants than male combatants. Which is weird.
Didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk gameplay because I struggled to figure this one out. First of all, there's only 4 buttons.
Correct.
And one of them is taunt.
Yes.
You have punch, kick, and special.
Right.
And I sat down and immediately started doing my Hadokens and my dragon punches and my hurricane kicks and thinking it was going to be fine. And they were the tiniest, wimpiest little Hadokens of all time.
Oh, yeah. You got to power them up.
Yeah. Because the whole game is built around the same gyms from Puzzle Fighter where you're supposed to, as you attack your opponent, gyms pop out of them. Sometimes they pop out from boxes on the ground and stuff.
It's just like real life. If you beat somebody hard enough, gyms pop out.
Right. Gyms come out. Or coins.
Right.
Sometimes
one of the two.
Coins. And they power up your different special moves, which it lists at the bottom of the screen. So you'll know which special move, like, you've powered up your Hadoken. And I think they go to level 3. Is that the maximum?
Yes.
And then you have a big giant honkin' Hadoken. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
But when you start the match, all your special moves are
pretty weak.
Kind of weak.
But there's always a chest there at the beginning. And it always has a big gem, which will level up one of the 3 things to level 2 immediately. So if you manage to catch that before the opponent, then you at least have one of your moves powered up so that you can use that to try to find gems to power up the other ones.
But then what confused me were the flash combos. The game seems to really want you to use these flash combos, and they're very fun.
Right.
Because flash combos, whenever you're doing them, each iterative attack in the combo, the characters will very often change costume entirely.
Right.
Into alternate costumes or homages to other Capcom stuff, or sometimes just wacky things.
Yeah, I love that part.
My problem is I couldn't figure out the flash combo thing.
Well, for the most part, a lot of them just require you to continue to hit punch or kick.
Yes.
Like you just keep tapping the punch button over and over again. And once you've caught a character with that first hit, then just continuing to hit that same button over and over will continue the combo.
Yes. And I was playing Ryu, and for whatever reason, I cannot get him to flash combo for shit.
That's because his flash combo doesn't change costume.
I couldn't get him to do any. I don't know. I feel like he wasn't doing any. I think by the end of it, I kind of figured it out. But he does not change costume.
Right. He just has
so for a while, I thought
combo.
I was doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And then I switched to Zangief, and his flash combo just felt so much easier.
Yeah.
It is. I did also notice where you can't really just rapidly hammer the button.
No, you have to hit it in a rhythm.
You kind of have to time it.
Yeah.
And that feels kind of weird to me for fighting, because there may be, and I just didn't encounter it. There's no move canceling in this that I've seen.
Not that I know of, no.
Which is weird. I'm not a big fighting game person. I'm not the guy that's like, well, you can cancel this and into that and into this, and these are your combos, and here's all the cancels you can do. But I noticed that I naturally kind of figure one or two move cancels out just in the course of playing, and I utilize them heavily. And I found none of them in Pocket Fighter, and it felt very strange because it means that all of your moves, you have to wait until the previous move connects.
Right.
And so it makes the game, like, it doesn't feel slow. It makes it feel like
rhythmic. It feels like you
choppy
have
to me.
Oh,
is what it feels like.
I feel the opposite way. For me, it feels like you have to follow the flow of it. Like you have to figure out what the pace the game wants you to take is and just kind of ride along with it. Rather than constantly interrupting it to do something else, you're taking each path to its logical conclusion. Now, obviously, the opponent can interrupt you and fuck your shit up. But
and thankfully, your flash combos don't need to connect for you to continue doing them, which is nice.
But yeah, I love some of the costumes, though. It is that was my favorite part of the game.
The costume changes are awesome, but it felt choppy. And I think it was
myself.
I think it was just because I kept trying to play it as fast as I could,
probably
like any other fighting game.
Yeah.
And it was I don't know, it was messing with me, but it felt. But I get what you're saying. Like, I could see how it would be rhythmic to someone. They changed super moves. They're not super moves.
They're mighty combos.
They're mighty combos. But it's basically a super move.
It's a super move.
There's also like a special guard, the Mega Crush.
Yep.
I only got that off like one time.
If I remember right, you have to be airborne to do it.
I was doing them on the ground. I swear I was, or maybe I wasn't. I don't remember. I read the manual like 4 different times how to do the Mega Crush, and I figured it out, but then I kept forgetting because it's one of those
never
things
used it because it just expends so much of all the things you have collected and saved up to that point that I would just much rather not use it. And
well, it basically dumps all your gems, doesn't it?
Your gems and your mighty combo gauges.
Yeah, which at that point, what's the damn point?
Right.
I do find it interesting that it's one of those fighting games where it doesn't reset you to the edges of the screen in between bouts. Yeah. So sometimes the enemy will sort of land right on top of you.
This is true.
If you're not paying close attention.
Yeah, that's similar to the later Darkstalkers games as well as the I guess you could say the Marvel Capcom games, since they don't really have rounds. You just wait for the other character to pop in.
I did also feel like the double tap sprinting was very powerful in this game. I think because due to the size of the characters and the size of the sprites, there's just less screen real estate.
I can see that.
So you're just on top of each other basically all of the time.
Right. And then on top of all the other, increasingly, they sound complicated, but in practice they're just additional systems on top of one another. But on top of all that, you also have your items, because you can collect these elemental orbs.
We didn't touch on items.
Yeah, because you start with an orb, and you can use it with your special button, and you can also collect them from treasure chests. And I feel like they can be used well in battle or in combat, but I don't feel like they add enough to the game. I feel like all of your other super moves and your special moves and your combos and everything are already more than enough, that it just kind of feels like an extra thing to deal with. A lot like the Infinity Gems and Marvel Superheroes. Yeah. It just feels like another thing.
Yeah, I feel like I barely paid any attention to the items.
Right.
What I did like from a strategic front was, because the gems power up one of 3 special moves, you always know what your opponent has powered up.
It's true.
And so in a competitive format, because you want to, like, if you have a level 3 Hadouken, you want to use that.
Yeah. And
so in a competitive format, it's neat because you see what your opponent should be doing,
right?
And I, of course, I played it by myself because I don't have any friends. But I like the idea. Well, it's too late. I like the idea of seeing someone else's strategy and them having that open hand of like, oh, they've got their Hadoken powered all the way up. They're probably going to do that. And then the mind game of maybe them pivoting and doing something else, and kind of playing around with that is interesting to me.
And also there's that one move that you use with the special button that basically knocks gems out of the other person. Like it also damages them, but it gives you more gems than a regular attack would, and it also powers down their moves a little bit. So if you know that the move that does the most damage or that they are most proficient with is powered up, you can just try to spam that attack whenever you have the opportunity in order to power them down, just to try to give yourself more of an advantage.
I do really like how, because as much as I feel like it feels like I'm kind of being like, well, I wish it was just a regular Capcom fighting game, but I do like the gems. I do like how heavily they leaned into it and how important they made them.
Right.
If this was just another Capcom 6-button fighting game, it probably wouldn't feel nearly as interesting or unique as it does. I do like the gem system a lot. I think I was just struggling coming to terms with how
all the other
different
things.
it is. Yeah, everything else in the game. Tell me about the story of
well, first let me talk about
Saturn.
the console modes, because
I'm sorry, because the WonderSwan version adds cards, and I'm very interested in these cards.
Yeah, I barely touched on that part.
Oh no!
There is a card fighter mode on the WonderSwan, and I hear it is interesting, but it's not in English, so I didn't bother.
Is it like Capcom?
I don't
versus
know.
SNK?
It wasn't in English.
Oh, damn it, Saturn!
But the PlayStation and the Saturn version have an extra mode called Running Battle, which is basically an endurance mode where you have to fight literally every other character in the game with one stock. It's just you versus everyone. You never you get some health after each opponent. Like I think between a third and a half of your health refills after each opponent. But you just have to go through all 12 other characters. Just back to back to back to back with nary a loading screen in between. And it's a neat endurance mode as far as fighting games of that era. And also because of the specific game modes and game design choices of this game, it means you get to carry over your gems in between each one. So
that's cool.
It lets you be a little
now
overpowered.
I'm sad that I played the arcade version.
Oh, it's it's out there. I've got the PlayStation. I can just rip it for you.
Now tell me about the story. Since you won't tell me about the cards from the WonderSwan version. There are cuts. Each character has cutscenes. Like they kind of went all out.
Right.
As far as fighting game stories of the late 90s go anyway.
But it's very similar to how those games worked out, where each character had their own different story. And that's something that Capcom really started to emphasize in the late 90s on all their fighting games, where each character had their own path and their own final boss and everything. And this does the same thing. And each character has different cameos as well of other characters. Obviously, Tessa has other Red Earth characters, which I think is the only time any of those other characters appeared in anything else. But you do get to see a bunch of references to other Capcom games throughout these, and they're cute and they're fun, and it's worth tinkering around with them if you are a fan of other Capcom games. If you have not played any other Capcom games going into this, you probably none of them are going to make sense to you. It's going to just seem like cartoony nonsense.
They are really goofy, cartoony nonsense.
Yes.
Yeah, like Saturday morning cartoon level. Although my favorite single image from my time with the game is Zangief in a business suit that is way too small for him, crammed into a coach airplane seat with the tiniest reading glasses of all time, like looking down at this little tiny thing in his enormous hands.
That's what he does in between fights.
I love the idea of Zangief in like a regular human-sized business suit, like reading a tiny little fucking hardback. Like,
It's how he passes the time.
I don't know why that was my favorite.
It's a business Zangief.
Let's talk reception.
Yeah.
Because this game, it did okay.
It did pretty well. It didn't break any records or anything, but it was received positively.
Yeah. It was the 9th most successful arcade game in Japan, 97. As far as reviews, Game Rankings has it at a 73. EGM gave it a 7.3. GamePro gave it a 4.5 out of 10.
Yeah, which is pretty high, I think.
A 4.5 out of 10?
Oh, sorry, 4.5 out of 10. I think that's supposed to be a 4.5 out of 5.
Okay, 4.5 out of 5. I was about to say, GamePro fucking hated this.
GamePro does out of 5 on everything, so I must have gotten that wrong.
Next Gen gave it a 3 out of 5. Yeah, I'd agree with these scores. I mean, it's like a solid, like,
say it's a
B minus C plus kind of thing, right there in that range. Complex Magazine ranked the game 42nd in their list of the 50 greatest fighting games of all time in 2011.
In 2011?
Yeah. On the one hand, I'm like, man, I don't know if it's top 50 fighting games ever made.
Right.
But then at the same time, there's not like a ton.
And a lot of the fighting games are pretty iterative. So when you when you narrow them down, it can make sense. I can see that.
I guess so. But at the same time, you're like, all right, we got Street Fighter 2 is going to be on that list of 6 times?
Yeah, right.
All the alpha games are going to be on there.
Right.
You've got 2011. I think you've got 9 Mortal Kombat games up for well, they weren't all fighting games,
and even still, just looking at other other Capcom games, you have stuff like Darkstalkers. You have the Marvel games. You have the
SNK's got
SNK's got
20 or 30
series,
fighting games,
right?
and like 15 of them are good,
right?
So I don't know. 40. I don't know. In my head, 42. I'm like, Also, all the Smash Brothers games.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know that I agree with 42.
Right.
But I don't know that I could come up with 8 games that should have been in front of it.
That's fair.
If that makes any amount of sense. Let's talk Legacy. This game basically went it's dead, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
more or less.
It came out. They never made any more. It was.
Yeah.
There's a pachinko. Yeah. There's a pachinko of it in 2002.
Yeah, and the thing is when that I've already forgotten the fucking name of it, that cat fighter game that Capcom released on April Fool's this year and last year.
Oh, Nico.
Yeah, Nico Drop. When they put that out and it had all these cutesy chibi versions of Street Fighter characters, all I could think of was this and Puzzle Fighter, and I was like, man, if only they could revisit this, and they don't. They're not going to do that. They did release some feature phone games back in the early 2000s where they reused art from this game. It's,
I'm guessing, like, I don't know. It's one of those games where it feels like a pretty small experience.
Right.
Which I don't mean in a bad way. I mean in like you could play it for a couple hours, really experience all of it, and then maybe you play it with your friends sometimes.
Right.
It's not a huge roster. Each character only has really a handful of moves.
Yeah.
There's not really a ton in the way of like learning combos and stuff because the combos are
very
mostly
simplistic,
automated.
Yeah.
So it really is, a pretty succinct experience, and I wonder if it just has the bad luck of coming out in the era when fighting games were evolving to be these extremely complicated monstrosities.
I would love to see a remastered version of this come out, maybe with a slightly expanded roster, just because I feel like this is one of those games that is a good introduction to fighting games.
Absolutely.
For new players.
Yeah, if you have a friend that's like, man, I don't want to play fighting games either. They're too fucking hard to figure out. You always kick my ass. Like, have them spend 20 minutes with Pocket Fighter and then play it, because that's all it takes to basically understand the game.
Right, and it shows you how to do some of your moves on the screen at all times, because the little gauges at the bottom where it shows how powerful your moves are, how many gems you've gotten, it has a little animation of how to do that move there. So it for new players, that's great to just have that shorthand to look down on. And it's not all of your moves. You have other moves that aren't those 3, but that at least gives you 3 that you now know how to do immediately.
And those are the 3 that get powered up.
Exactly.
So they should be the ones you focus on anyway. So I don't know. I feel like as far as like good simplistic fighting games, there are not enough of them, and the ones that do exist do not get enough attention because fighting game fans quickly move on to more complex, games.
The most complex games.
The most ridiculously insane air dashing anime fighters I've ever played. And they're fun, but man, I feel like my brain is on fire playing those. Like, well, did you do a guard crush EX cancel into an air dash? And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying.
I don't know what any of those words are.
If that makes your eyes glaze over, then I think you have a fun time with Pocket Fighter,
And if you just like dumb named games, then find the arcade ROM so that you can call it Super Gym Fighter Mini Mix.
Yeah, it's sad that Puzzle Fighter seems much more beloved and well remembered than Pocket Fighter.
No, don't get me wrong. Puzzle Fighter is amazing. I
Oh
love
yeah,
that
it's a
game.
fantastic game. And I'll be honest, if I was sitting down by myself playing games and I had to pick between Pocket Fighter or Puzzle Fighter, I'd pick Puzzle Fighter. I would pick Puzzle Fighter. Nearly 100% of the time.
That's fair.
It is a fantastic, fun puzzle game. I feel like it has more meat on its bones.
Yeah.
I feel like it just has more going on.
That is a good point. It kind of feels like this was a rushed concept or a half-done concept.
Yeah. Even saying that makes it feel like they didn't complete. It feels complete.
That's
it
fair.
just feels like maybe it had a small scope to begin with.
That's fair, yeah.
You know?
And if this were re-released, I really do hope they expand a little bit on it. Maybe if at the very minimum add some extra characters, or maybe give you the option of which moves you can power up or something like that.
Yeah, like if I could, like, at the beginning of the match, it's like, all right, equip which moves you want to be powered up.
Right.
Like that would add a whole new layer of strategy. That would add like different loadouts and play styles, and, and you know. I do know that fighting game fans in general, and this is just my personal experience of fighting game fans.
Right.
So any fighting game fans that get prickly at this, I'm not trying to generalize.
He's
but
targeting you personally, by the way.
I specifically dislike you. It has been my experience that fighting game fans do not like portions of fighting games where the power level changes mid-match.
Oh yeah, where things are variable.
Yes. And it is my understanding that like, I don't want to say hardcore, but dedicated fighting game aficionados do not like power level changing mid-match in a way that is not predictable.
Yeah, I think that's why Hero from Dragon Quest was disqualified from Smash tournaments for a while there, if he's not still.
And it's also why when you play with, like, you know, hardcore Smash guys, they're like, Final Destination, no items, you know, because that's how they want to enjoy a skill-based game.
Yeah, it's about skill, not variability.
And having a random variable in the game of, like, I don't know, I punched you and a confetti of gems came out.
And a treasure chest fell on your head.
Suddenly you're having to reevaluate power level on the fly, which is, and so I think maybe that's why it's less beloved in the fighting game community, whereas Puzzle Fighter still seems very beloved in the puzzle game community. If there is one, is there a puzzle game community?
I hope so. If so, I'd like to say that I'm a member.
Is there an Evo for puzzle games out there somewhere?
Oh, man, I wish. Somebody let me know if there is. I'm in.
Yeah, I'll show up and play like Tetris and Puyo and Puzzle Fighter, and let's start this. This needs to happen. Seriously. I want this to be a thing.
But no, from the fighting game perspective, though, for those of us like myself who are more on the casual end of enjoying fighting games, like I love playing fighting games with friends. I hate playing them when there's any kind of stakes on the line. If anybody
when it goes from a fun hangout thing to a skill game.
Right. As soon as people start taking it seriously, I'm out. I'm not interested at all. So for people like me who are more interested in just like the goofy, have fun with your friends and, oh, look, I just punched you 5 feet in the air. How stupid is that? For people who are interested in that side of the fighting games, this is an excellent game to add into your mix, to introduce into the group, because it is just dumb and silly and fun.
You could say it's a good game to add into your mini mix.
God damn it.
You know what else you can add into your mini mix? Our Patreon, patreon.com/Retro Warriors. You can get uncut versions of this show. You can get Talking Wizards, which is great. You can get After Hours, which we just released a new episode of. It was a really good episode. I like that one. It's...
I haven't forgiven you for that. Segue.
Also, hopefully, you just listened to this episode and went, I don't know, everything seems the fucking same to me. Hopefully that's what happened.
Right.
You're like, I didn't know, you know, and we just talked for 2.5 minutes about how things are going to change around here for no reason. Hopefully we've constructed an elaborate podcasting illusion where everything looks the same to you, but this episode was way less work.
Yeah.
Anyway, we do want to thank the following patrons for making this specific episode possible, starting with Dwight Evans.
And Tom Danks.
Ryan Walton.
Chris Britt.
Zaven Torian.
Michael Hawes.
Michael Castro.
Mr. Jiggyfly.
Neil Hayes,
and Robert Vieira Jr.
are all fine patrons that we have on our Patreon who made this episode possible, and we thank them. And we thank you for listening.
Indeed.
Please rate and review us on your podcast aggregator of choice.
Yeah.
And you know, just have a good day, you know.
What was that?
Have like a real good Monday.
Yeah, man.
And, I know we release on Monday morning. You might be driving to work and you're like, man, I fucking hate my job, but you know, it's gonna all be okay. It's all just dust in the wind, man.
What just happened?
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.